The first thing, energy efficiency. There's always the opportunity to shave off a number of kilowatt hours so that you can pay less, right? Actually, many persons think you are not going to be able to do as much, you're going to be less productive, but that's not necessarily true. So energy efficiency, if you get an auditor, they'll show you the areas where you're simply wasting energy.
Jamaica has one of the highest costs of electricity in the entire world. And if you think your personal light bill is high, try being a business owner. So what are your options? I'm Kalila Reynolds, and it's time for another episode of Money Moves JA, brought to you in partnership with EXIM Bank's Business Advisory Service, giving you the tools to grow your business. My guest today is an energy consultant. His name is David Barrett. Hi, Mr. Barrett. How are you doing?
Well, thanks.
Good. So you've been in this industry for a long time, renewables. How does it work for business, or how could renewable energy work for business?
Energy is actually one of the major costs in any business operation. The SMEs found in particular that during the time when the oil prices were going up, that was the reason in the top 3 why some of them closed, right? And without the energy, there's nothing much you can do. You can't see, there's no light, you can't run machines, there's no energy, etc. So it's right there. It's one of the most critical things that you need, besides your HR dimensions and so on.
Right. It is one of the most expensive inputs to doing business.
It is.
Especially if you are in the industrial sector and manufacturing. That JPS bill hits you hard.
I was surprised this morning as I looked through the rates. I'm sure many persons don't know that your rate is running something like 70 Jamaican dollars per kilowatt hour.
Ouch.
That's painful. That's really painful. We're actually one of the highest charged nations in terms of energy. And again, that's something that people don't realize. They just pay their bill.
I know one of the concerns and complaints of manufacturers is that it makes businesses here uncompetitive globally.
It does, and our nearest competitor was Trinidad in that regard, and we found that we couldn't compete against Trinidad because their energy prices were so low. It's the same thing.
And it's subsidized for them too.
And it's subsidized because they have the resource. And it's the same thing for our international competitors. They have lower energy prices relative to ours, and so it's a competitive barrier for us, as it were. We're innovative. We have found ways to get around that. But we have to find ways to bring that energy down. And as far as it's related to JPS and their supply, you can't change their prices. So what can you do? You can change your usage or your source.
Well, that's what I was coming to. So what are the options for businesses here?
For me, I always suggest the first thing, energy efficiency. There's always the opportunity to shave off a number of kilowatt hours so that you can pay less. Right. Actually, many persons think you are not going to be able to do as much, you're going to be less productive, but that's not necessarily true. So energy efficiency, if you get an auditor, they'll show you the areas where you're simply wasting energy. Lights which are on, ACs which are running when you don't need them, and so on. And a simple thing as allowing your cold air to get through your windows, onto your doors, and so on, is actually a waste that can be easily, cosmetically changed. The next level, I would then say, is renewables. Renewable energy sources.
Before we move to the renewables,
Okay.
I think you can tell me, you probably know, I think DBJ has a program that allows you to do an energy audit. I think it's a grant program.
DBJ has a grant component to their special DBJ loans. And, we can talk about the financial packages which they have on that. And EXIM just recently launched their renewable loan.
All right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about renewables. So what are the options when it comes to renewable energy for business?
All right. So for the commercial sector, which is the interest, I think, here, most of it will be solar, because solar is modular. In other words, you can build as you need. Solar can be installed on site, in situ, so you can put it on your roof. You can make it into a carport, so you're not losing your car parking space, but you're actually getting something that's elevated.
How does that work now? Okay, carport. So where do the panels go?
So essentially, you just build a structure that elevates the panels, and then the panels are above it. It's like building a porch.
Oh, all right. So in your parking lot, and it kind of shades the car, so it serves a dual purpose.
It shades the cars. It allows you to generate your power. And if you want to get into EV, it's a perfect place to plug in. You know, so solar is the best one. There are opportunities for wind performance in the commercial space for Jamaica, not so good, because essentially wind needs a clear flow. And where you have a setting that you have buildings that are changing the aerodynamics, you don't get the maximum out of wind. But wind is a possibility if you have high buildings. Digicel, for example, has 3 wind turbines on its roof. The Petroleum Corporation has 3 turbines on its roof. And there are some of the hotels on the coast that may have a unit or 2. But
I did not know wind was an option for commercial use. I thought it was mainly like Wigton Wind Farm had to be a big operation.
So scale makes a difference. Wigton is an independent power producer, IPP, so it gets into 2 megawatt systems. The systems I'm talking about are 3 kilowatts, 4, 5, 10 kilowatts. So they're relatively small. They can be mounted on a building. But solar is going to be the sweet spot for Jamaica and the SMEs.
But it's a big investment up front, isn't it?
It's a big investment up front, but you have to look at it in its economic value. So if you simply look at, I'm going to pay this much, and that's very high right up front, and that's a deterrent to you, then you're missing the golden pot that's behind it, because now you can reduce your energy costs from JPS. Companies have reduced theirs 50% recently. Chippies, for example, reduced their energy costs from JPS by 50%. There are some which are just merely keeping the utility as a back-end supplier, right? And when you compare the cost of anywhere from 60 to 70 Jamaican dollars per kilowatt hour to a solar system that's going to generate in the order of about 23, maybe 25 cents per kilowatt, dollars per kilowatt hour, it's a no-brainer. You are saving on either ends. And then that solar system, once installed, is going to continue to generate for 25 years. So your investments easily paid back 4 to 7 years, depending on your particular combination. That's another dimension to look at. It's going to pay back in under 7 years easily. So the rest of it is free.
You anticipated my question, because I'm like, okay, make this investment up front, but then how long does it take for you to get back that investment? 4 to 7 years is not bad, given that it lasts for up to 25 years.
Right.
But what's the maintenance on those type of systems?
So your solar modules, what we call panels, is really modules on your roof, nothing. Rain falls and it washes it off. Of course, if it's angled at the right angle, which typically it is, there's really nothing to do. The main changes might be your inverter, which you might need to change in, let's say, 7 to 8 years, depending. If you have batteries, then if you have the old-time flooded lead-acid batteries, then in about 5 years, you might need to change those. The lithium-ion batteries, maybe in about 8. And then just to have someone to check perhaps annually to make sure that all your wires are in place, there are no damages, all your connections are tightened, because another thing people don't realize that a lot of their electrical connections vibrate and get loose. So just to have someone come and check those things, the maintenance is very low.
I know one of the concerns for residential customers considering switching to solar has been that storage issue with the batteries, right? Mm-hmm. And so solar is one of those things that is best used live, for lack of a better word, while the sun is shining. You get the use of the solar so that you don't necessarily have to store it. But business doesn't necessarily have that challenge because they mostly operate in the day, right?
So yes and no. If you're a tourism facility, then you're 24 hours. And even in that regard, so let's look at storage in 2 dimensions. Let's look at hot water storage. We didn't speak about solar water heaters, which is something that every house, every building in Jamaica should have a water heater. your tank is actually a storage device. So that hot water that you are producing all through the day is being stored in the tank or drained from the tank and then replenished. So even when the sun is not shining at night, your visitors, your guests, can still have hot water running from the tanks. That's one kind of storage. The other kind of storage is the one that people think about most of the time, batteries. And the prices of batteries are coming down, way down. They're becoming self-maintaining, as it were. There are no fluids to change and very little maintenance. And the price of those are great. And what that does is now it takes the energy produced during the day, stores it, and it automatically switches in the nights. So you can literally run your home or your facilities during the entire night using the batteries. Again, it's a no-brainer. Adding the batteries may extend the repayment time, but once that is done, again, it's pretty much free energy.
Yeah. All right. Do you do energy audits, by the way?
I prefer not to.
All right. Well, how can people reach you if they need to?
342-9996 is my number, and dbarrett2@gmail.com.
All right. Well,
I provide other services.
Well, tell us what services you provide.
So I've typically provided advisory services, usually at national levels. So we're looking at the potentials Jamaica have for renewables, or I've given project management support, like the UNDP installed solar systems on a number of hospitals, 6 of them. I was one of the project advisors on that, just to make sure. And in fact, one that I love in particular was Mapen Hospital. They had a large quadrangle which was supposed to be for seating. It's out in the sun, it's uncovered. The seats were, when we checked the temperature, it was 56 degrees. That's not a seating area. And the thought came to mind, why not cover it? The same carport idea. Why not cover it with solar panels? And we did. That space now, that temperature went down to about 23 degrees, more than half. They have their panels there in place, and they have the opportunity to enclose the place if they wanted later. So that's the kind of innovation that I try to bring to
Very nice.
projects.
Thank you so much, David.
You're
All
welcome.
the best.
You're welcome.
Here's a recap of David's key points. Energy efficiency is important. Get an auditor that will show you where you are wasting energy and conserve. Some renewable energy options for commercial businesses are solar energy. Wind is also a possibility if you have high buildings. Solar system installation is expensive. However, your investment will pay for itself within 4 to 7 years.
That's it for this episode of Money Moves JA, brought to you in partnership with EXIM Bank's Business Advisory Service, giving you the tools to grow your business. Check out their website at eximbankja.com or visit my website, KalilaReynolds.com, for a summary of this episode.